The results are tough. They are very tough.
This is a party that has run its course, failed to do its duty, which was to represent working people, and deserves to die. And I think that's what we're witnessing, the slow death of the Labour Party.
The party membership, the MPs, they believe that they're failing because they haven't been progressive enough. A party just completely gripped by delusion from top to bottom.
Complete reshaping of British politics in every way.
Hello and welcome to the Spike podcast. I'm Georgina Mumford. I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by Spike's deputy editor, Fraser.
Hi, Georgie.
And down the line by Spike's chief political editor, Brendan O'Neill. Hi, Brendan.
Hi, how's it going?
We are, of course, going to be talking about the local elections today. The results are still coming in at the time that we're talking, but we have a pretty clear overview of how things are panning out. So, Brendan, to start with a party that is doing really well, that has had a very positive night, Reform's results have been pretty exceptional so far. Do you want to kick us off by talking a bit about that?
Yeah, so as you say, at the time of recording, we don't have all the results for England's local councils. We don't have much from Scotland or Wales at all. But what we do know so far is that Reform is doing incredibly well, as lots of people predicted that they would. And they're taking seat after seat from Labour and also from the Tories across England, especially in the kind of old Labour heartlands, in the Red Wall and those kinds of areas. It really is extraordinary. And, you know, people will call this a protest vote, or they'll say the establishment has been given a bloody nose by Reform voters. I think it's now more serious than that. I think we're witnessing a reordering of British politics. I think we are witnessing a very quiet but firm revolution against the duopoly, against the two-party regime, against the knackered old system that we've been living under for more than 100 years. People are pushing back against that now in a very conscious, reasoned way. And I think we're witnessing the beginnings the ongoing, the continuation of working class communities' desire for not just a new party, but a new kind of politics. And then if Labour goes around today saying we've been given a bloody nose and we will listen to you, we please forgive us, I think they're missing a trick, because this is something far more serious than that. And I think the country itself will be quite radically changed by what happens today and what happens over the next few years.
I think, yeah, that's absolutely right. The fact that Reform tops the opinion polls so consistently, I think, has blinded people to the significance of results like this. What we're witnessing is a once-in-a-century reordering of the political map. I mean, there's been a lot of cope from the mainstream parties, I think, up until today, really. You know, you will have heard Labour, warning, managing expectations, saying these are just midterms. They don't reflect, real sentiment in the country. We can win things back. You will have heard the Conservatives trying to compare the Reform surge to the SDP in the 1980s, their version of that. Something that, may show up in the polls but won't translate into real electoral results. You've heard that people even further on the right talking about actually, Reform is losing it. It's actually Restore is where it's at. I'd be surprised if they have a single seat in these elections by the end of the day. So I think this has answered a lot of people's this is going to wipe away a lot of the cope. I think, Reform now has a very, very serious chance of forming the next government. This is a party that is serious, that means business, and is going to continue reshaping British politics, I think. And as Brendan says, it is reaching into places that I would say in some cases it's going further than Boris Johnson when he demolished the Red Wall. Places that the Conservative Party couldn't reach in the Labour heartlands. We're seeing it take seats in London as well. It took its first council in London, Havering, this morning. This is a serious movement. This is not a flash in the pan. This is not a protest vote. This is not voters simply throwing their toys out of the pram, throwing a wobbly. This is a big change.
And obviously on the flip side of that, Labour have lost slightly under half of the seats it was trying to defend. I think it's lost 8 councils so far. Brendan, this can hardly be a surprise, right? What were your thoughts on that?
I think what's happening to Labour is really striking and also hilarious. I'm enjoying it enormously. I'm watching all the collapse of their seats around the country, and I'm really enjoying it, because this is a party that has governed very badly over the past couple of years and which has betrayed working class communities time and time again. So it's getting its comeuppance. But, the main thing I'd say about Labour's declining vote in these elections, people say that the ruling government always tends to do badly in local elections. So to compare it to America, the ruling government there would often do bad in the midterms because people kind of want to teach the government a lesson halfway through general elections. But this is something more serious than that. I think what Labour is suffering in these elections is much more historic, much deeper. It's gone much further than even losses that other governments have suffered in local elections. The mistake a lot of commentators make, and the Labour Party itself makes this mistake, is to think that Labour has a Keir Starmer problem, and that if only they were to replace their leader, with Angela Rayner, who's apparently such an inspiring figure, or Andy Burnham, or Wes Streeting, or Ed Miliband, if only they were to get a fresh face, not that any of those are fresh faces, then apparently its fortunes would recover and it would go back to normal. That is to misunderstand the crisis facing the Labour Party. This is not a Keir Starmer problem. This is a Labour problem. This is a party in complete freefall, historic freefall. It's losing its kind of plummy middle-class public sector voters to the Greens and some of them to the Lib Dems. And it's losing its working class voters to Reform. It's shedding voter after voter in all directions. And it's because this is a party that was founded in 1900 to represent the interests of working class people. And not only does it no longer do that, it now openly agitates against the interests of working class people, both in terms of its failure to grow the economy, its failure to police our borders, its failure to respect British history or to respect British communities. On all of those fronts, it hasn't represented working class people, but in fact has betrayed them, has let them down, and has pursued a politics that runs directly counter to the interests of working class communities. So people will say, get rid of Starmer, get in some new blood, give a shake up at the top of the Labour Party. None of that will work, certainly not in the long term, because this is a party that has run its course, failed to do its duty, which was to represent working people, and deserves to die. And I think that's what we're witnessing, the slow death of the Labour Party.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just have to look at some of the results that have already come in to see just how bad things are for Labour and to see how delusional it is to think that simply a change of leadership, a cosmetic change at the top, could repair these things. Look at somewhere like Wigan, which is partly where Andy Burnham's old seat is. This is an area controlled by Labour for 50 years. That's been many of those seats have been lost to Reform. I think actually all of the seats that contested there lost to Reform. You look at Tameside, which is Angela Rayner's patch, again lost to Reform. There's delusion at the top of the Labour Party, of course. Keir Starmer saying that actually he thinks that this is going to toughen his resolve. These are tough results, but he's not going to lose his resolve. And actually, what voters are annoyed about is that the speed at which we're not delivering the change they asked for quickly enough. No, voters want the exact opposite of what you are proposing, Sir Keir. But also, again, from below as well, the party membership, the MPs. They believe that they're failing because they haven't been progressive enough. They see the real challenge as being from the Greens. You had Kat Eccles, one of the Northern MPs, saying we need to be more progressive. We need to stem the losses to the left. And you just think, what does that involve? That means what? Even higher taxes, more state spending, despite the fact that we have the highest government spending since World War II. Government spending, not necessarily a bad thing, but if that's what people wanted, it's clearly not resulting in people flocking to Labour. So again, a party just completely gripped by delusion from top to bottom, and voters are giving them a very bloody nose. Hopefully this is the final nail in the coffin for them.
Have you ever been this close to buying something online and then realised you couldn't be bothered to get up and find your card? You're in bed, it's late, and you've already added way too much to your cart anyway. Maybe you should just leave it until tomorrow. That's when you notice the purple Shop Pay button. One tap and you're done. No card hunting necessary. But what you might not realise is that little purple button is powered by Shopify. And Shopify isn't just making it easier to buy, it's making it ridiculously easy to start your own business too. In fact, Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. Everything from massive brands like Mattel and Gymshark, all the way to people just getting started. You don't need to be a tech expert either. Shopify gives you hundreds of sleek, ready-to-go templates so you can build your brand exactly how you want, without the hassle of coding anything. Plus, you can run everything in one place. Inventory, payments, analytics. With Shopify, all of it is right at your fingertips. Better yet, Shopify's built-in marketing and email tools help you find your customers and keep them coming back time and again. And yeah, we've got to mention it again. That purple Shop Pay button. It's used by millions of businesses worldwide, and it's the reason Shopify has the best converting checkout rate on the planet. People trust it. So if you want fewer abandoned carts, head over to Shopify. Sign up for your £1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.co.uk/spiked. Go to shopify.co.uk/spiked. That's shopify.co.uk/spiked.
And we should talk about the Conservatives. This is another party that wasn't projected to do very well. Maybe there are signs that they're doing a little bit better than anticipated. They did take back Westminster, which was a victory for them. How are things looking there, Brendan?
Not great, really. Let's put it like that, which I think is a bit of a shame, because I think Kemi Badenoch has kind of rediscovered her mojo in recent months. I think she has demonstrated real leadership on issues like anti-Semitism, wokeness, women's rights, net zero. I think she's actually making good calls on all of those issues. And she speaks in a way that is quite normal, which is very unusual in British politics. Lots of people will have seen the clip of her getting into an argument with some kafir idiot about Jews and Israel and so on. And Kemi Badenoch held her own incredibly well, didn't back down, and spoke like a normal person, which Keir Starmer is no longer capable of doing. Ed Davey, God help him, he's too busy bungee jumping to talk to anyone. So it's a shame what's happening to the Conservative Party, because Kemi Badenoch is a good leader. But at the same time, it's perfectly understandable. I mean, this is a party that's been in government for a long time over recent years. Well, for its entire history, it's been in government a lot. And it's not done what it should be doing. And in fact, a lot of the problems we face today, especially in relation to the sovereign integrity of our nation, economic downturn, the pursuit of suicidal policies in relation to net zero and climate change, and even wokeness, even a lot of the kind of woke ideals that have really caused a problem for women in particular, a lot of those really took off under Conservative governments. So they deserve to be reprimanded by the electorate as well. So they're not doing fantastically well. I do hope Kemi Badenoch can hold on. I hope the Tory wets, all those kind of 50-year-old blokes who really should be in the Lib Dems, I hope they don't conspire against her and drive her out, because she's definitely the best thing the party's got going for it. But more broadly, I do think this is a party that deserves a slap on the wrists, and that is absolutely what it's getting.
Yeah, and I think the bright spots for the Conservatives that we've seen so far, retaking Westminster, retaking Wandsworth, shouldn't cloud the overall picture, which is one of continued losses, which it really, for a party in opposition, is not a good place to be in. One thing that's interesting is, both of those seats or both of those councils, I should say, are in London. And one of the interesting trends we've seen so far is that actually the two mainstream parties have had their best results in London. It's actually the rest of the country that is really, really revolting against either the Conservatives or against Labour. I mean, a lot of the seats were last contested. One reason for the big Tory loss, a lot of the seats were last contested in 2022 when the Conservatives were still riding high, when they were in government and could still win by-elections, when you'd see that giant, Boris balloon outside the polling station in Hartlepool during the vaccine bounce. If people remember that. So it's inevitable that they were going to come down from that period. But it is also interesting how London seems to be bucking the trend in backing the mainstream. 75%, I think, of the seats that Labour has still held on to are in London, whereas it's the rest of the country that is, I think, more ripe for revolt.
And finally, we should talk about the Green Party. Brendan, I know you're a huge fan. What have you made of the results for the Greens so far?
Yeah, I love the Green Party. I mean, they're very entertaining, that's for sure. It's hard to tell at the moment how they're doing. They seem to be doing pretty well in places where we thought they'd do pretty well, like student towns, for example, and certain kind of leafier suburbs or inner city places. That's the kind of place we thought they would do well, because they are winning the votes of students, of middle class voters, and obviously lots of Muslims as well will vote for them. I have to be honest, I find the Green Party entertaining because they're so mad, but also quite terrifying. And, the thing that makes me laugh is that if a reform candidate, if Nigel Farage or Richard Tice were to go to a university in this country, they'd likely be hounded off and called reactionary and racist, get off our campus, you'd see all that kind of stuff. And yet those same students, those same supposed student radicals, are voting for a party that has candidates who call Jews cockroaches. They're voting for a party that has candidates that celebrated the largest mass murder of Jewish people since the Holocaust. They're voting for a party that has so little regard for women's rights that it will let men go into women's changing rooms. It will let men undress in front of women and girls. And yet the students who line up behind that party and think they're being really revolutionary will look down on the rest of us as reactionary and racist, even though they're voting for what I would consider to be a reactionary party that has some racist people in it. So I think that's got to be exposed and talked about a lot more. Who are the real reactionaries in British politics? And I think what we're witnessing at the moment is a fake revolt and a real revolt. So the fake revolt is the Green Revolt, where you have all these people with multicolored hair and all their Marx books on their shelves and, putting their fist up for photographs and saying, yeah, we're revolutionary. That's the fake revolt, because actually what those people are doing is lining up behind this very entitled politics of identity, this very divisive politics of identity, and a very reactionary agenda in relation to climate and everything else. The real revolt is coming from working class communities who are crying out for a restoration of sovereignty, for a restoration of common sense, and for democracy to have real meaning. So I think people around Britain have got to pick their lane. Do they want to be with these new reactionaries who pose as radicals, or with ordinary Brits who just want the country to be put back on an even keel of normal politics and common sense? So that's the kind of how I understand the divide coming through in the general elections. There's a phony revolution and there's a real revolution.
Absolutely. And I just hope that these elections, there's still more to come. There's still a lot of London seats in particular to be declared, that where we could expect the Greens to do quite well. But certainly on the basis of what we've seen so far, hopefully these local elections will put to bed the idea that, the next election is a toss-up between Reform and the Greens. That the Greens have just as much a chance, just as much as an insurgent force as the Reform Party. I think that has been surely put to bed by this. The Green Party, again, I think they have been damaged actually over the past couple of weeks. I think there is since Gold was Green, a lot of people who maybe might have been considering voting Green have seen actually just how crazy they are, particularly their attitude towards anti-Semitism. Zach Polanski has gone from, bizarrely, people may have seen that he said that he was appalled by anti-Semitism, in the Labour Party under Corbyn. Then he said he later changed his mind to say that actually he thought it was all a hoax, and it was just a right-wing smear attack. Now it's come out that he was actually complaining when he first joined the Greens that there was too much anti-Semitism back then. And you think about how much worse things have got now, as Brendan was saying, with people openly calling Jews cockroaches and the like, with two Green candidates being arrested on suspicion of stirring up racial hatred against Jews. I think the hypocrisy is clear for everyone to see. And I think the tension as well, because of course the Greens are courting Muslim vote, I think the tension between some of the Greens more, I hate the word progressive because it's not progressive, but some of the Greens more identitarian, woke positioning is going to come in conflict with that. We've seen effectively fights between Green candidates in Birmingham and Muslim independents, with Muslim independents accusing a Muslim Green councillor or wannabe councillor of standing for the gay party. Clearly, that tension is not going to. That tension is going to explode at some point. So I hope that we're seeing peak Green. Maybe I've spoken too soon, but that's at least my wish, even if not a prediction.
Fraser, before we move over to the Spike podcast Unlocked, do you have something you'd like to announce to the viewers?
Yes, for Spike supporters, our next event is going to be a live Q&A with Spike's very own Brendan O'Neill on Tuesday, the 9th of June at 7:30 British Summer Time. Brendan will be answering your questions. You can ask anything. You can ask him about the state of British politics, the state of US politics, Israel, Gaza. Ask him about his book. Ask him what he had for breakfast that morning. It really is up to you. But you can only join if you're a Spike supporter. So if you're a Spike supporter, you can sign up now by going to the Supporters Hub. But if you're not a Spike supporter, then why not sign up today? It's really easy. Just go to spiked-online.com/support. You'll get access to this event. You'll get discounted access to the Spike Summit that's coming up in June as well. And you'll get unlimited access to Spiked as well. So think about it. See you at the Q&A. Thank you so much for watching the Spike podcast. We'll be back next week, so make sure you subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you never miss an episode. If you enjoyed the Spike podcast, then why not check out what else our channel has to offer, from our documentaries to our weekly interviews and podcasts like The Brendan O'Neill Show. And if you're a Spike supporter, you can watch the second half of this episode by logging in on the Spiked website. If you're not yet a Spike supporter, then why not sign up now? You'll get unlimited access to the website, ad-free reading, discounted tickets to our events, and so much more. So become a Spike supporter today by going to spiked-online.com/support. That's spiked-online.com/support.